breakfast. There. It'll be okay. You know, are you ever gonna actually fish instead of just practicing your cast?
That's not the important thing right now.
Okay.
I don't believe you have these powers.
I do. We're in episodes right now. How the fuck do you think I could dodge that pillow? My eye-hand coordination's terrible.
Whatever, man. CJ wants to know if we can hang out later tonight.
Still practicing your cast?
It's not the issue right now, man. You don't have these powers.
I do, and I can prove it. CJ's gonna text you seeing if we can hang out later.
Yeah, sure. Dude, let's go have some fun.
Damn straight we're gonna go have some fun. Man, abusing time traveling is awesome. I stole like $50 from my sister.
What are we gonna do with all that?
I don't know, but abusing time travel is fucking awesome. Like, it has no recourse.
Dude, you alright?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just got a little bit of a headache, but we can keep going.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Alright. Whoa, Tommy. Tommy, wake up. Wake up, Tommy. Tommy.
What happened?
Passed out, man.
I had a vision of something terrible.
What was it?
I saw the new Terminator Genesis trailer.
And?
John Connor's the Terminator.
No! I can keep the money though, right?
Hell no, this is mine, bitch. Are you abusing time travel? CJ, don't do it.
I got to.
I know you're in a dark place, but I don't think you have the balls to.
What do I have else to live for? What is my purpose?
Come on, man. I was there for you when you were depressed. You know, the there.
You was, but it didn't really work.
Stop being picky then. Not the best of ideas. You okay?
Yeah, but why did I fucking die?
Well, I mean, you did only fall off my back deck.
I was hoping I would break my neck or something. That's my luck.
You know you have to get like at least like 30 feet up, right? I mean, like, you fell like 7 feet at the most, if that.
Could I?
Oh, something good tonight. Make me forget about you for now.
Okay, well, the time for me to finally talk about episode 2 of Life is Strange is finally here. Now let's go ahead and see if this stacks up as well as the first episode did. Now, right off the bat, I need to go ahead and warn you that if you haven't seen my review of episode 1, that you should probably go and watch that review first and watch this one, because ultimately these reviews are going to be companionated onto each other and will probably focus more on the story aspects and small things that I may have missed in covering the previous episode, because a lot of this is going to be interchangeable, talking about the same episodic game from episode to episode. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you have seen it, but you need a brief refresher, here is my general opinion on episode 1. I really liked episode 1. I liked the concept that it had. I liked the story. It had problems. There was a couple low budget production things that kind of irked me a little, but for the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed episode 1 of Life is Strange, and I was really curious to what we could fruit from the following episodes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dig right into this game. Okay, now the fidelity of this game, which I'm gonna have to go ahead and point this out, which I'll probably have to do a whole lot, is that there's a lot of the same that's pretty transferable to episode 2, which I completely expected. But anyway, with that out the way, let's go ahead and talk about the overall fidelity and production of this game. Fidelity-wise, it's pretty good. There's a couple hiccups that it has, like episode 2 especially, it has more frame rate problems than the first episode did. Like, when you're in a cinematic area or first loading into a gameplay area, the frame rate can get pretty janky at times and actually ruin the experience a little bit for you. But that's since been patched, but it was there for half the life of the episode. So that's something to know. On top of that, we have all the previous problems that I stated in the first episode. So we have the bad lip sync, the small color bleeding, and some rolled textures. And on top of that, there's other areas where it looks pretty low quality and not all that great in the game. That being said, it doesn't hold it back that much, and it's still damn good production for the $5 that you're going to be paying each episode, and the $10 combined value of episode 1 and 2 is completely worth it right now. So that being said, other than a couple frame rate problems and a couple other small and significant problems that added on to the previous problems, this is more of the same fidelity-wise. It still makes great use of the awesome soundtrack that I cannot show in this review because I will get flagged out my ass because all the music's copyrighted, but I'm not going to hold that against the game. That's YouTube BS that YouTube has to deal with me on, so I can't really show you any of the music. But trust me, if you play this, the sound score is pretty fucking amazing. Okay, now the length of this episode. Remember in my episode 1 review when I said you're only going to get 3 hours at the very most out of each episode? Episode 2 has been proving that pretty true so far. This could change later on, I just don't know as of right now, for the sake of this review. But with that being said, I don't feel like I'm being swindled at 3 hours at the very most. For the $5 that you're spending per episode, it feels like very wholesome, worthwhile content. Now, with that being said, you can complete this in under 3 hours if you're willing to ignore background things like your journal and photo collecting and other things like that. But with that being said, if you're willing to pay attention to all the extra background stuff, you can get 3 hours at the very most. So ultimately, for what you're paying, it is worthwhile, and it's not bad that it only clocks in at 3 hours at the very most for this episode. Okay, the gameplay. Now, the one point I need to drive home here in this episode especially is that the gameplay is going to be very similar throughout each episode. So, when embarking across an episodic point-and-click game, you need to be ready for that. It's not a bad thing. A matter of fact, I really like this, because when you play an episodic point-and-click game, you don't want each episode to have drastically different gameplay. You want it to have pretty similar gameplay, so when you go from episode to episode to episode to episode, you have more of the same feeling and you can get right back into the groove, and it doesn't feel like you've been away for a month and a half when you sit down and play it. Now, with that being said, a lot of the gameplay elements that I talked about in the first episode review are ultimately still here, and I expect them to be here the whole time. You still walk up and get descriptions on everything. You still have long, detailed conversations. There's still great character development with these people that you talk to. You still read your journal to get more background lore. You still collect photos. You still talk to people on your cell phone. You still do everything that you did in the first episode, but it's done here in a way to where you don't feel like you're doing the same thing. Sort of. How they do this is they have you go to different areas and do different story pieces that involve you doing different things that involve the base gameplay, so it gives the facade of doing different things, which ultimately is a smart way to cover up very similar gameplay for these types of games. Now, ultimately, remember when I said that every point-and-click game falls into the trap of the same thing kind of happening no matter what? Well, that does happen here, but like I said, it does get different enough, and I've seen things pan out differently in certain areas through me, my sister, and a couple friends playing this game. So ultimately, it does get different enough to be okay, but the story doesn't drastically change other than in the few key areas, which ultimately I'm fine with. So gameplay-wise, it's still your average point-and-click game with mobility and a time-traveling twist. That being said, when you make a decision, it tells you that this will have consequences, and you can choose to go back and do that over real quick, or go on your gut. It just It just tells you that there's a consequence. It doesn't tell you whether it's good or bad, so it forces you into a decision. Again, another good thing that was borrowed from the first episode, which I want it to be here for all the following episodes. Also, they actually let you move around in third-person gameplay somewhat here. Like, you're actually able to walk and run around and freely interact however you want to. This adds another layer of depth to the game where you feel like you're actually playing the game more than you are. So ultimately, the gameplay is a lot of the same things that made me really excited with the first episode. You still have that time traveling twist, you still have that mobility, you have a lot of other things, it's still character developing, you still have the background lore that you can read. Everything's there, but it's still done great. And that's all I can really sum up the gameplay as. A great follow-up in comparison to the first episode, and ultimately I expect the gameplay to hold like this throughout all the episodes. So now with the gameplay completely wrapped up, let's go ahead and talk about the most important thing with this, the story. Now, the most important thing to get right in an episodic point-and-click game is the story, in my opinion. You need to get this right the absolute most, because that is the main reason why everyone is there playing your episodic point-and-click game. They care about the story. That's what's going to keep coming them back episode to episode to episode. So, how's the story fare in this episode? Well, I'm proud to report it fared fucking awesome. Like, holy shit levels of good. Now let's go ahead and explore why I feel this is holy shit levels of good. Which, I'm gonna be honest, is pretty fucking fun to say. But distractions aside, let's move on. Now, I really like episode 2 for the fact that it's the great follow-up episode that it needed to be, in my opinion. Now, if you're confused about where I'm going with this, let me tell you episode 1's job and this episode's job. Episode 1's job was to be the introduction episode, meaning its job is to introduce you to the story, characters, concept, and universe, and get you interested with it enough to explore forward. It needs to intrigue you to go further on, which episode 1 did very well, in my opinion. Now, episode 2's job is to be the follow-up episode, meaning that it needs to pick up all the pieces that episode 1 laid down and run with them and get you more interested and invested while still introducing new things. Episode 2 does this fucking fantastically. It does this by introducing some new concepts to the story while keeping all the old previous concepts that you had in the first episode. My favorite concept that they added to this is the physical fact that time traveling could actually take a physical toll on someone, and that there's an actual punishment for doing it if you were to have it as a superpower. I really like that kind of a concept for this because it's meant to be the whole everything has consequences. It furthers that concept even more, in my opinion. I really like that they explored that. I hope it sits there in the rest of the episodes. So I really like that concept. I really like how they concept high school life. Like, there's points of it that are good, there's points of it that are bad, and you're ultimately going to be in the gray about a lot of different high school things. And it shows that high school wasn't the best place in the world for everyone. I really fucking like that. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about before I get to the fabric of the story itself is the pop culture, because I really fucking liked the pop culture in this, meaning that it was good pop culture in my opinion. Now, for me, good pop culture is you reference something very subtly, but it doesn't get in your face or does a direct reference. All the references were very small and well done and shows you what the makers are a fan of and what they want to reference in this. And if you get it, it's a nice little Easter egg for you. If you don't, it's not hampering your experience. So this is how I prefer pop culture, that they subtly reference a lot of things and keep you invested in the main concept, but shows that they had some inspiration to reference in different areas about different things. I like that. So now, the basic fabric of the story. So episode 2 picks up right where the first episode left off, because it kinda had to, given the week deadline we were given at the end of the first episode. Not a bad thing, they just kinda had to do that given the deadline. So anyway, it starts with Max waking up from the night before, where she's been researching what the hell her time traveling ability is, if she could figure out more about it, and she stayed up the whole night, and she wakes up with the most goddamn realistic I'm still half fucking asleep faces I have ever seen. Like, do you see this? That is my face in the morning. Like, every morning when I have not gotten enough sleep, that is my face. So realistic. Anyway, moving on. She wakes up, gets herself good to go, then spends the rest of the episode trying to hone in her power and figure out more of what it's about, while trying to figure out what's wrong with some people around her and what's happening at Blackwell. And one character took this episode and ran with it for me, and it will be her episode for me till the end of time. And I'm not going to tell you who that character was and why, but if you've played the episode, you know. And it's her episode to the fullest degree, because she really made this episode impact you by the end of the episode, and really made you wish that you made some right ass decisions. So ultimately, it will be her episode for me. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is that this episode cashed in on some choices earlier than I thought it was going to, which is both good and bad in my opinion. Good in the sense that it surprised me and takes the story in new directions that I didn't expect, but bad in the sense that if they make a habit out of doing this, it could ruin the whole plot arc of the episodic structure. So it's just something to be leery of, but as of now, it really surprised me and I'm glad. Now, the one thing that would surprise me the absolute most with this story would be if they had some of the smaller, more insignificant characters step up and become more prevalent as the episodes go on. I doubt it, but I have hope. That would really be cool for me, though, if they did that. So now let's go ahead and tie everything together for the verdict. Life is Strange Episode 2 is the great follow-up that it needs to be. Yes, while it has a few more polishing problems than the first episode, it does its story and gameplay correct, and that's what really matters. So ultimately, I'm going to give Episode 2 an 8 out of 10. The same verdict that I gave the first episode. It would have an 8.5 if it didn't have the polishing problems, but ultimately it does, so I'm going to give it the same verdict. Now, I really enjoyed episode 2, and we're going to have to see how episode 3 fares, but I am really hyped for this, because both episode 1 and 2 have been equally good in my opinion. So episode 3 is either going to do pretty bad for me, or it's going to knock it out of the park and get me super fucking invested. We'll see. But until then, I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next whatever fucking video I do. Bitches.